welcome everyone to our Leading from the Front series. My name is Kosnatis Kaka. I'm just doing the welcoming and the closing. So I'd just like to introduce our chair, who will introduce our esteemed speaker. And we're really very excited about the session. So I think sit down, grab your coffee, and get ready to be engaged and marveled, and learn real life changing lessons from a true business leader who leads from the front. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you, Nkosinathi. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and let me add my welcome to that of Nkosinathi to this month's installment of Leading from the Front series. I think in line with our aspiration, you would have seen in the video that this year we are 45 years old. We continue to celebrate managerial leadership and to effect socioeconomic transformation by bringing leaders such as today's speaker to come and share with you in master classes such as this their experiences, and so that you can then go back and really implement. So today's session really is as per usual. We have a great speaker on the lineup, and I'm sure you're looking forward to the session, as I am. Let me first acknowledge BMF leaders, past and present, that are in attendance, and leaders from other parts of societies, all protocols observed. So today our program is as follows. Nkosinathi has already done the opening. We will then I'll do a brief intro of the speaker before we get into the main proceedings. At the end, Nkosinathi will then do a closing and announcements. So today's session, we have Mr. Moyo, Mr. Peter Moyo. I don't think he needs an introduction, but I want to just take you through the process that we went through when we select a speaker and we select a topic. When we got news that Mr. Moyo was going to come through to our platform, we spent a few minutes discussing topic. And for me, I think courageous leadership was an obvious topic. I think many of us have searched for precise alchemy of ingredients that constitute to great leadership. And for me, I think courage is really the key. I read somewhere that Aristotle said that courage is the first human qualities. And he says this because it is the quality which guarantees the other qualities. So in other words, for any great trait or skill a person will always remain hidden if they have courage, if they don't have courage to use it. So if you have skills but you don't have courage, they will not come to the surface. I mean, if you think about it, you can't be honest if you don't have the courage to tell the truth. You can't be innovative if you don't have the courage to try new things. And really, these aren't the only qualities that are affected by lack of courage. Confidence, decisiveness, and trust are some of the traits that will suffer if you don't have courage. So let me tell you a bit about our speakers. Like I said, I think you guys already know of him. Peter Moyo is husband to his wife, a father to his 3 children. Some of the other roles that he has taken up in society include being a chairman at Vodacom, group CEO of Alexander Forbes, and CEO of Old Mutual Emerging Markets. Peter was a partner at EY and is a successful businessman and founder of NMT Capital. Peter, thank you for honoring our invite, and welcome to the BMF Gauteng Leading from the Front Masterclass. So I want to kick off our discussion with a question. My question is courage a teachable or learnable skill? I mean, if you think back, I want you to think back. I'm sure none of us can picture you as this, but I want you to think back to when you started out as a young chartered accountant to your first time as a CEO. Would you say that this skill developed with time? Like 10,000 hours of practice, which is a rule of thumb that was popularized by Malcolm Gladwell in Outliers.
It's Chairperson, thanks very much. Let me start off by congratulating the Black Management Forum for achieving this milestone. Being in existence for 45 years says a lot about the resilience of the organization. But on the other hand, when one sits back and says, if the BMF has been going on for 45 years and our country has had its democracy for 27 years, is there something that seems to be missing, that we still have BMF playing a very important part in a country such as South Africa? But I don't want to take away from the fact that it's actually been a big achievement, and I've certainly had the privilege of dealing with the BMF over many years, and it's a very, very successful organization, and congratulations to you. And also, I want, similar to you, to acknowledge the BMF leaders that are here present and the past leaders of BMF, and all the people that have taken time to come and participate in this discussion. Now, the question, is this a teachable thing, leadership? It's well, people say leaders are born. There are a lot of things in leadership that you also must learn. There are certain traits that you might actually see in somebody. So, starting point, the reality about leadership is there must be followers. You can't, and it is about people. So when they say leaders are born, part of it is how you interact with people. You cannot talk about a leader without talking about people, and you cannot talk about a leader without talking about followers. So some of the things, Chair, that you spoke about, the ethical behavior and that kind of thing, it's actually got to be part of who you are. A lot of us were fortunate in our young careers that we had the privilege of being sent for further education once we'd actually been identified as senior managers. And I had the privilege of being part of a leadership development program at the London Business School, doing my AMP at Harvard. So I reckon it's a mixture of both, but you must be prepared to learn, and how you put yourself out there is also a very important thing. How you take grab opportunities. Grabbing opportunities is not something that all of us can easily do. So I'll say it's a mixture of both. So that's in a long way of saying you actually need both. Chair, earlier on, we were talking when the chair was saying that Kosnati is going to be asking kind of the real questions. I said, no, Chair. You must actually take charge. That's actually part of it. And it's a very interesting thing. Quite a lot of us, Black people, Africans in particular, when we're given the stage to take charge, we don't take charge. And that's actually something that we must accept and learn, that part of leadership is actually taking charge of the people that you lead because they look up to you. We can't hear you, Chair.
Put you on mute.
Oh yeah, thank you, Mr. Moyo. I think I should have mentioned that the discussions before the start of the event remain in Vegas.
Okay.
but I think it's you raising I wanted to delve into another point, but I think the point that you raised really deserves attention. And so I often say that as part of our culture, I think although it's in our DNA. I mean, people are nurtured and there's nature. So DNA and our body is our nature, and we are nurtured. But part of our nurturing in terms of our social upbringing, I think that is part of one of the things that holds us back in corporate. And I think what you've just said around taking charge is what I often coin as saying that as Black people, we're community-based, and to a certain extent, we are drawn to consensus type processes. So, but it's a lesson for me. It says certainly that I need to start applying immediately. But I think what you also talked about taking charge of, and really putting your hand up. You said that you must grab opportunities. I read somewhere that courage, there's different types of courage, and I think the courage to take initiatives and take action is really what I think you were talking about. So I came across an article, Mr. Moyo, when I was trying to look for things to talk to you about. In September the 7th in 2008, that article was titled "Stay in Power." CEO Bruce Campbell has what it takes to transform the financial services group. So one of the paragraph read like this: did transformation fizzle out after Moyo left? And Campbell says not. Cyril Ramaphosa and Shanduka have been extraordinarily supportive of me and the way we're handling transformation. Peter got it going, and I'm maintaining the momentum, but there's a long way to go. So I wanted to zero in on the phrase "Peter got it going." For me, I think that speaks to the courage to try and trust. So you take initiative and you trust in people. And some of you may wonder why I'm fascinated by this statement and why I'm linking it to courage. If you've worked in corporate like me, you may have been subjected to a balance card at some stage in your career. And there's always a financial goal which often gets used as a reason to not transform. Peter, I just wanted to ask you to maybe tell us about how you started the process at Alexander Forbes, as per Bruce Campbell's words above.
Chad, thanks very much. One of the things when I joined Alexander Forbes, we actually say that we needed to transform the organization. We needed to see an organization that long term will look like what this country looks like. And some of us believed very, very deeply in that South Africa was not bankrupt of Black people. And I'm talking not just broad Black, I'm talking about Black people as in this color. And so I took my leadership team through quite a lot. Part of it was cajoling to say, look, if the organization was actually going to succeed, we actually needed Black people. The majority of our customers were Black. We ran the biggest pension funds in the country. Some of them were union funds, and almost all of those members were Black. The money that we're investing was the hard work of Black people. The people to whom we're paying benefits were the children, the widows and the orphans of these Black people. So you can't actually take their money and actually say, but Black people, when it comes to financial goals, they might actually mess it up. No. It actually doesn't. It didn't work. It didn't work like that. So we spent quite a lot of time talking about those things. I must also add that I was actually very, very fortunate that when I talked about transformation to my group board, the Africa board, they supported me. When I talked about transformation to my management team, they supported me. Well, presumably they didn't have too much of a choice when it came down. But we actually believed in it. And maybe let me take you one step back and say this journey, for some of us, we'd actually half seen the movie. Immediately prior to me joining Alexander Forbes as the deputy CEO of Old Mutual. And we'd actually managed to create what I'll still say was the most transformed financial services organization, where actually people like Thabo Dloti. Thabo was at the time running the asset management business, having run group schemes with people like Sizwe Mncwangu, who ran the healthcare business and later to run a group schemes, which is MFC today, people like Ben Kodisang to run our property business, and Tabiso Pugu running our healthcare, and many others. Silo Mloko used to run our asset management business. And we'd seen Black people that had actually done it, had been successful. They were not failures. So that belief, we carried that belief into the likes of an Alexander Forbes. And in my later life, at Old Mutual, we still carried that on. But again, it goes back to maybe one of the things that we did not talk about, Chair, is that as a leader, you must stand for something. I mean, I was quite clear that we were not going to fail on our financial goals. We're trained like all of them. Similarly, I was very clear that I needed a strong team of Black African people around me. And like I said, I believe this country is not bankrupt of very good Black South Africans to take charge of big organizations. And they've done it, and they did it successfully. So even that journey at Alexander Forbes, it was maybe beginning because when I got there, it was not as developed as where I'd come from at the time at Old Mutual. And I must actually say, even at Old Mutual, I can say I likely drove it myself because I fundamentally believed in it.
Thank you. Thank you. I think there's a lot to be said about believing in something and setting the goals. And what I take comfort in is the fact that you've shown that you can deliver financial results with Black people. And it's a fallacy that there aren't any Black people who can deliver and who know the work. I guess for me the concern, but it's a product of its time, I suppose. Is the names that you mentioned, Mr. Moyo, were all men, but I know that it has nothing to do with you, but circumstances around the time. And how I know that is because a few months ago we hosted Karabo Murule. And Karabo is an actuary. at that time when I introduced her, I mentioned this, and I'll continue to mention this. And I know Karabo actually is not all that you are. I don't know if you're on the call, but for someone like me from Pampirstad, who you are the second the second actuary that I know, and the first who's a woman. It's a big deal. I think it's also a big deal in South Africa, even now. I mean, you mentioned 45 years, BMF is that old, 27 years is the age of our democracy, yet we still need an organization like BMF. It's evidenced by how many Black children in this day and age don't know or don't know an actuary, and to them becoming an actuary seems like a pipe dream. So when Karabo was here, she said something that led me, I don't know, I picked it up. I don't know if anybody else picked it up, but what she said led me to believe that you actively employed some what I call trust courage, the ability to let go of power, for lack of a better word, and just give people chance to prove themselves and get the experience that she needs. So I feel that you gave her that trust courage when she was working with you. And I think I'm raising this because for me as a Black woman, and certainly for many others who are working hard to make it in corporate, it's really an important point, especially as you continue to hear stories of how women are often overlooked, and how patriarchy is still rife in organizations. So how did you get it right? Is it succession planning? Just please share some of your strategies, because I think there's colleagues here also who are sitting in employment equity forums who get stories around why Black women get replaced by men or white men, and maybe I know that there's those also who have powers to hire and fire, so that they can go and implement.
Well, firstly, Paul, when you talked about Pampirstad, I've not heard about Pampirstad in a long time. I first cut my teeth in this country in Mufftown, in Mafeking.
Oh, wow! Oh, wow! Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Talking about kind of getting it, I think the first thing you actually have to believe in it, look out for these people. I see Karabo is here. I'm not saying this because she's here. And Karabo, I hope you don't mind me using you as an example. When I first met Karabo, before I took the job, I'd accepted, but I'd not started, so I was preparing myself. And we had a meeting, I think our first meeting was at my house. I thought, wow, here is a very brilliant young lady. And one of the first things that I did, I think I started work on a Wednesday or Thursday, was to confirm Karabo, Clement, and Clarence into the group EXCO. The following week, there were question marks. I had the privilege, I'd had the privilege of actually working with them. And you see these Black people that can do it. And part of the role that we have in this day and age as Black leaders is to lift the people around us. And I really want to stress this. It's not just lifting people for the sake of it. It's actually, firstly, there are a lot of very, very good Black people that can do this. I fundamentally believed that that crop of people could actually lead the organization. It is a statement of fact that even when I prepared my succession plans, which I sent to the board as the CEO of All Mutual, I said, if you're to ask me, the person that in a reasonably short space of time that should take over the running of that organization was Karabo. And the other two people that I mentioned were similarly Black African people, Clarence Ntengwe and Clement. And I'd also say that Garth Napier, who's Black, and Zina, they'd actually just joined us at the time. I said, in the fullness of time, we could. And actually, the profits of that organization, the profit of that organization were run by Black people. So that's actually how much confidence, the real engine of the organization was actually run by Black people. The profits that were generated by All Mutual came from Black people. I was the CEO, kind of holding together, but the businesses were run by those people. Did they do a good job? Oh yes, they did a good job. In fact, in my last results presentation, I stood up and said that of the things that we'd said we're going to do, I think it's only one that we'd not done to our satisfaction. And that was thanks to Black people. So firstly, this notion that Black people are not there, this notion that Black women are not there, it's actually something that we must not, we must disuse ourselves of that notion. They're there. You talk about Karabo being an actuary. Where did she train? She trained with all of them. Where did Kaya Koboto train? He trained with all of them. He was actually in an organization that at the time when we hired him at All Mutual, where they thought they were better asset managers than us. And so why should we actually doubt? I mean, I'm a chartered accountant by training. A lot of us trained in your so-called big firms. Why would we then doubt that the Black people are there? They are there, but what we really need to do as leaders, know what we stand for, take along some people. But it's also important to make bets on those people. And you must actually believe in them. Obviously, if the All Mutual results were bad, who do you think the first person the board was going to fire? It was actually going to be me. Well, I ended up leaving All Mutual for different reasons. That's a discussion for another day. But I'm not stupid to think that I will actually put people that can't do the job. I had confidence in those people, and that confidence was actually well-founded. And so we've got to sit back and say, if you're serious about these things, surround yourself with very, very good Black people. Fortunately, in my case, some of them I actually found at All Mutual. All I had to do was actually just create the stage to say, all I can do is give you the stage, just shine. And yeah, I mean, it's I'll keep on repeating this, that they trained like everybody else. They went through the schools. So 27 years after our democracy, for us to keep on talking about these things. And by the way, we've got a whole lot of other people that have done it. I mean, with the likes of a Season Masana that did us proud when he ran both Telkom and the First Rand Group. Today, Sipho Masego is doing very, very well at Telkom. Sim Shabalala, and I mean, they're there. And we need to be comfortable that our own people can actually do it. It actually needs us to be comfortable with our own.
I think that's so true. We need to be comfortable with our own. And I think we need a masterclass on just how to do succession planning for organizations, but this is not for, because I go back, I cannot understand an organization where people are not don't get positions, don't get promotions because there are no people when they've been there in all this time? What have you been doing as a leader to develop your people? So I really, really enjoyed what you were saying around just believing in it and lifting people up and having that confidence in people, putting guardrails in place as well. Yeah.
So there is an interesting question from Noctula, which maybe fits in with your question of succession planning. Certainly, one of the things that I immersed myself in all the organizations that I led, the human capital component was actually such an important one for me that the succession planning journeys right across, I knew who our top talent was. I knew who we thought should actually be promoted when I was actually clear, and not from anybody. I spent a lot of time with the top team discussing people and being clear that we should have enough Black people, we should have enough women in these positions. So it was not something that I rubber stamped. I led those discussions because it was actually an important thing for me. You can't leave, and I'm not saying human capital practitioners are not important, but you cannot leave the human capital component only to human capital practitioners. It is the role of the leader.
Thank you, thank you. So there's a couple of questions already. I see one from Karabo and Noctula again. Maybe before we go there, Mr. Moyo, let's take a question, a supporting question from Kosinate.
We can't see you. Oh, we can see you now.
Yes, no, through you, Chair. Through you, Chair. All protocol.
You are noted, you are noted.
So I think I had one question, especially from, us middle managers. There's a big problem, a discourse, a disconnect between middle managers and execs. And we always kind of think that they only want to be there and in it for themselves. But as we were engaging last week, I think a question came to mind where I thought, let me ask you to tell us the experience of a Black executive in a room where they are a minority, not just in color, but in voice. If you can just take us through that, because I think that will inform us in middle management what you have to go through within that position, the type of battles that you have to fight emotionally, physically, psychologically, in order for you to assist, to safeguard yourself, grow the organization, and also develop the rest of those who expect you to help them amidst the hostility of the boardroom and the boardroom politics.
Maybe I will relate a story, then get back to that question. As a youngster at ABASA, the then Association of Black Accountants of South Africa, one guy, Willie Ramushaba, I think he was the first deputy president of ABASA, says he was taken from Limpopo to Joburg. He was a bright student. He was flown on a company jet to Joburg. And when he got to, maybe let me not name the accounting firm, he was actually just put in a room where he never developed. But he actually found that on Mondays, people will actually be talking about what they'd been doing. It was all whites. And he said he started listening. And he would check where they were going. And then when they were partying on a Saturday night or Friday night, he will appear there. And he'll sit, drink with them. And then when the time came, and he'll say, now, I require a pass to leave. So he'll end up staying there. But the issue I'm raising, it is the importance of creating the networks in those situations. There are very, very few of us. There should be many of us. And it is important that we actually create those networks. Fortunately, I was always comfortable in my skin. And fortunately, even from the time I was a partner at Ernst & Young and a young and upcoming manager at Old Mutual and rising through, I had a lot of confidence in Black people. So I used to call those Black people to my place. We'll actually discuss what was happening. It actually became important for us that we knew exactly what was happening around us. It was exactly what we saw white people doing. The former Auditor General, Terence Nombembe, might actually tell you this. I gave them a big assignment at Old Mutual. And I said, Tara, when you want to talk to me, you don't have to come to go to my office. You know where my house is. So it is important as Black people to create our own networks. But again, it is important as senior Black people to take those aspiring youngsters into our wings and talk to them where they do not feel threatened. I mean, we did a lot of all of that. I mean, when, again, I don't think people like Ben got his son mind. I mean, whenever there were challenges, either Ben will call me and say, Pete, let's drive to the wine route. And we'll talk about those problems on the wine route in a relaxed atmosphere. So we've got to build those networks. In fact, Jeff Van Rooyen, when we were young, in Abasa, when I was the president of Abasa, I remember him saying that, you see, the problem with us is that we get into a board meeting, there's a decision of R1 billion, for argument's sake. We get surprised when the chairman says, what do you think? People say, okay, okay, okay. And we want to ask 1,001 questions. They might actually have discussed all the questions over the weekend. And so it is important for us to make sure that we know what is happening around us. It is important to share that knowledge so that we all get prepared. And it's important, particularly for those of us in leadership positions, to lift those that are up and coming. More so if we know our own story, more so if we did not get there by accident. I mean, I can tell you, the people that I worked with at Old Mutual, the Karabo and them, I was comfortable that in the fullness of time, I could work under them. But at the time I was their boss, I was actually comfortable of leading them. So it was, you actually had to maintain this balance, that have these people that can lead you, but at the time you are leading them, and you actually have to have the courage to always give them wings. So that aspect of it, I think, and Nkosinathi is actually quite important.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
You have to be comfortable to be led when you're a leader. I think it's an important one that some leaders don't get. But before I think you say a lot, and I wanna just jump on and continue. But I had promised that we'll go and take questions. I see Garabo's talking about the finance. I'm not sure if you saw it. She's saying, Peter, you've previously mentioned that you had some insights into how the financial services sector, the BBEE charter came about. Can you tell us about that to inspire young management professionals who are disheartened by the pace of transformation in our country right now? What would you say to managers, C-suite executive and board members of financial services companies today around what they need to do more to transform the sector? Thank you, Karabo. I think that's a It's a great one. I'm sure you're a BMF member, Karab.
Well, if she's not, she must actually join. Well, the thing is, I had the privilege of being the chairperson of the then Life Officers Association of South Africa when we drafted the Financial Sector Charter. And again, it was one of those things where I said, I'm the chairman. I am going to use my position to make sure that we get a very good deal for Black people. So we said, let's make sure that we do that. And as a result, we tried to get as many Black senior managers interested in this thing going. I still remember at a point in time when there was a view that it was not moving, the then Premier of Gauteng, Mbazima Shilowa, called a few of the senior Black business leaders, managers in these big companies and said, guys, let's make sure that this thing does not fail. But the only sad thing there was almost immediately prior to that, a few of us that were in senior management positions in financial services were at a meeting. And what was sad for me was hearing some of my colleagues saying, we've got these positions, how can we use them? I said, I don't have that problem. I've been put in that position. I know I'm going to deliver the results. We actually have to drive the change. Let's actually not ask for permission. And if people don't grab that, they are not going to do it. In fact, we were, by the way, I saw a comment from John Mwase. He'll recall that we're some of the first people to actually put incentives on ourselves for transformation. I think at a point in time, 20% of our bonuses were dependent on us achieving our transformation goals. And it's the irony of it is that when I led the biggest transformation at Old Mutual, I was the first one to miss my transformation bonus because our targets were actually quite stretching on the I got a bonus, but it was not a full bonus because our targets had actually been stretching. So we need to do that for ourselves. But the important thing is we actually need to believe. We really need to believe in our own. Chair, you are on mute.
Mute. Thank you, Mr. Moyo. Yeah, I quite like the idea of bonuses for transformation because I think, I mentioned earlier, and you did respond to it. Financial targets are often used as a prohibitant or a hurdle. And Noktula says, what do you make of Black people in these organizations who are themselves stumbling blocks for growth of their fellow brothers and sisters? How can we overcome this? Because if our own people are standing on the way, we will never progress.
Well, earlier on, I said, when you are a leader, you need to know what you stand for, and you've got to tell people what you stand for. To be frank, I'm personally sick and tired of these Black board members that go and take up space. Part of your job in a country like South Africa is to make sure that transformation does happen. It is a business imperative. And if Black board members don't take it upon themselves to do that, would we expect it to do so? I'm not for one suggesting that white people are bad, but actually just tell us that it's not necessarily in their interest to stand up and say, let's actually have more Black people, because the other side of it is actually saying, let's actually reduce the influence of white people. It's not in their interest. You can't ask for turkeys to vote for Thanksgiving, but Black people need to take that role. In fact, maybe the questions that should actually be asked when Black board members are interviewed is, they must actually talk about their track record on transformation and how they stand up for it. Yeah, it's actually sad. I've actually lived through it when we've actually seen and heard Black people actually not having confidence in other Black people. It's sad. It is really sad. I mean, some of us in the boards that we sat on, it is known that we actually stood and supported all of that, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. It's actually very sad, and it's sadly it's more prevalent than it's not that we would be discussing Black candidates to say, yeah, that one is not good. I mean, it's I always say to people when I say I've taken it upon myself to look for Black service providers, mainly because it's a personal choice, but also I stand for empowerment. I'm an activist, and that's how I live out my activism. But you often hear people saying, yeah, but you know, Black people, the services. I'm like, but you can't, based on one Black service provider, say that all Black service providers are bad. Try the next one. There's how many millions? Over 40 million Black people in South Africa. Surely not all of them are bad because that one bad supplier was bad. So I mean, yeah, it's a topic for another.
On a very, very light note, talking about using Black service providers, the first house that we built, I used to say our architect was Black, our builders were Black, our electrician was Black, the gardener was a white man.
Oh, wow. That is transformational. Yeah, great. So I just want to see there's a heartwarming message here, which is just testament and validates what you've said around just the networks and opening up spaces and making people who are in your structures below comfortable. Says Peter, this is Dumisa Shaula, I think, yeah. He's chair of Ekurhuleni. He says, Peter was CEO when I worked at Alexander Forbes in Cape Town. Whenever he was down there, he would always come greet me, making me feel important in a company that was predominantly white. Then. I admired his leadership since then. It's really heartwarming. We really honor you. Let's take another question. Oh, and thank you for giving us wings. Oh, I'm gonna start crying, guys. Stop it now. There's a question from Mfundo Zama. She says, very insightful, Mr. Moyo. How do we deal with the transformation of the mindset in Black leaders and not want to be seen and praised as the only Black person on roundtable discussions? How do we enhance mentorship programs for upcoming leaders?
Well, again, a big chunk of it goes back to your beliefs. I've never had any illusion that when I got a sense that certain communities like me, they did not like me as Peter, they liked my position. But the majority of Black people liked me as Peter. And so I was always comfortable that I'll actually sit in that company. I was always comfortable that even when I had some of my real challenges in the corporate world, I'll actually talk to Black people. Unfortunately, for quite a long time, it was largely people that were junior to me. I won't repeat the comment, but I actually remember coming out of one transformation meeting at Old Mutual, and I called Monhla. By the way, she's one of the senior business leaders that actually worked with us then at Old Mutual. And I remember saying, I used to call her Winky. I said, Winky, I'm actually just so drained. I don't know what to do with this. But for me, I could not share those frustrations with my white colleagues. They could not understand them. Not that they did not care, but they just could not get it. So it became important that I had my own around the table. And trust me, if you don't love yourself, don't expect somebody else to love you. I mean, this thing about not loving our own, if you don't love a Black person and you're Black, then I don't know how you think you can love yourself. So part of it goes into those real beliefs about us as Black people and making sure that we empower all of us and making sure that, because generally those are the people that are going to cry with you when things go bad. I mean, when I was going through my challenges at Old Mutual, the messages I was getting was only from Black people at Old Mutual. I mean, that's real. And I mean, you actually can't turn your back on that. You just can't. Because I mean, that's actually the reality of life. Those are the people that celebrate with you. Those are the people that cry with you when you're down. Those are the people that worry about you. Those are the people that will say, we're praying for you. And so for me, when you start thinking about that, it's impossible not to want to be associated with those people that care about you. Because over and over again, they've actually shown that, certainly for me, over and over again, they've actually shown that they can deliver. Over and over again, they've actually not been afraid to take charge. I was actually talking about taking charge. I remember some of my young Black colleagues then at Old Mutual, even if there's a problem, they'll say to me, Peter, we are the boss, we need to talk to you about this. But we want you to know that this is my problem. I'm not asking for your decision. I will make the decision. And it was actually just so inspiring to see young Black people actually saying, we are in charge. And that's actually what we've got to do. And we've got to surround ourselves with people like that.
Thank you. I think you've, I think the theme is coming through around we ourselves not wanting to transform and give ourselves platforms. And I'll say ourselves because I also believe if you don't love yourself, somebody who looks like you, you can't love them because it's just a reflection.
I just want to be clear, there is a role for Black leaders because let's actually take an organization like Old Mutual or any corporate. I'm using Old Mutual because that's the last job I was CEO at. If you are in charge and you don't give the space to other Black people to excel, it is difficult for them to do so. So you can actually shout and say, raise yourself. No. Don't forget that even then, I mean, some of us had the privilege of actually being given those jobs by the likes of a Gerard van Niekerk, by the likes of a Jim Sutcliffe, then we took it upon ourselves to give more of our own. In fact, I still remember Gerard van Niekerk saying to me, Peter, I want you to know one thing. And I mean, he was a white guy. He said, Peter, if you don't employ Black people, don't rely on your white colleagues to employ them. And so it's actually an important role that we play. So we can't actually sit there and say, Black people must actually pull themselves up. We have a role to create the space for them.
Yeah, it's so true. I'm thinking back to my situation at work where we had vacancies, and my boss was always like, Black females, please, non-negotiable. And I remember at one stage we were taking months and months to get a candidate with the experience that we were looking for. And we were just skinnering as colleagues to say, hey, this guy, Mar, you know, that guy really had everything that I needed. But he's this thing that he's telling us Black females only, and meanwhile work is piling up. And so I'm like, dude, what's up with that? You know, your colleagues are not, their structures are not transformed. I mean, you are like the most transformed. And he said to me, remember, if we don't do it, no one will do it. And I think that the message that I'm also just trying to bring across is sometimes you also just get frustrated, especially for me, Black is always first. But when it comes to women, I'm big on women empowerment. But when I think pressure at work, I need someone quickly. Sometimes it's really easy to give in. I mean, and I was lucky to have a leader who also believes and who reminds me of my values around, just wait it out. You'll get the female that you need will come through. And yeah, it happened for me. So, which is great. But you're right, if we don't create the spaces, then no one will create the space. I wanted to bring in, I see there's lots more comments, but I think they're along the same line around what are we doing wrong, and how do we address Blacks on boards. So I think you've answered some of them in one form or the other. But I wanted to bring, and I think—
Can I maybe deal with one other thing? It's our own mindset as Black people that we really need to introspect and actually say, what is it about us? What role have we got to play? I'm sure there are some people here that sit and say that the worst boss to work for
is a Black person.
Is a Black boss. I'm sure there are female colleagues that say the worst boss to work for is a female boss. But we actually have to understand the mindset that has been created around us. So if you're actually a Black person and you think you owe everything to white people, you always see them better than your own. Get rid of that. Because what then that forces you to do, the only person that you can be boss over is your own type. The only person that you can be boss over is another Black person. And that's actually why Black people feel frustrated by us, Black managers. That's actually why young female managers, employees feel frustrated. But it's actually that mindset. And part of it, I don't always blame the people because that's actually all they know. But it also goes back to actually even us at the bottom. When we've got a senior Black woman we must be the first to give her that due. We must be the first to give that black boss their due, not be the ones that say, hey, but it's a play. No. We must actually be the people, just like from the top, if we lift our own, even from the bottom, because this thing could have unintended consequences where black people can only see themselves bossing over black people. And the first thing that we've got to do is take charge and actually say, I'm in charge of everybody here. And actually don't mince your words about it. Because that's actually what leadership is. Yeah.
Thank you. I just want to see if there's any more questions before I delve into mine. Yeah. So one thing that I think when we released the invite, there was questions around courageous leadership, and I guess the link was to what's happening currently with your most recent employer, and I was talking to the person, and he was saying, you know, maybe ethical leadership and would have been the messages that you're sending, and my thing was like, I still go back. You need courage for everything. To be a great leader, you need courage. I'm reminded of something that Thuli Madonsela said around ethical courage means doing what one values above what one fears. I mean, if and some texts talk about moral courage being the commitment to standing up for and acting upon one's ethical beliefs. It's the same thing in my view. And I just want to maybe bring it back. You mentioned South Africa, and just what's been happening with the multiple commissions that are going on, and what needs to be done. And I'm asking you because having worked at, I think one of the articles that I read about you when you were being commended, it was one of the accounting blogs or magazines, where you were saying that being a CA gives you holistically around what business needs. And if you think about what makes the economy go around public sector, private sector, the two are really interlinked. You can't separate them. What are those things that needs to happen, both from a society but mainly from a government perspective, around just taking the courage to do the right thing and lead, taking the courage to lead?
Well, I hope nobody finds this offensive. I'll say it as I believe. We actually find ourselves in this situation in our country because our leaders have actually failed to lead. I don't know that there is any country with the same number of commissions that, I mean, we just about create a commission for everything. Why can't we make decisions? I think that's actually the first question that we have to ask ourselves. Why are we finding ourselves having to deal on just about everything raised by other people? It's, for me, it actually says we are failing at a very, very fast pace because we're given the chance to lead and we've actually not taken that Rather lead, make decisions and make mistakes and think about how you fix those. As long as you are doing it in an ethical way, people will actually understand. As long as you are doing it not for your own selfish ends, we are going to understand as a nation. But we've actually gotten to a point where there are simply not decisions that are made. It is consensus. It is commissions. I really don't know. And I think something must give. In fact, I was going to say that talking about leaders, those of us that had the privilege of living in this country under President Mbeki, we knew what the man stood for. You can't actually say he made only the right decisions, but at least you knew what he stood for. What he stood for, he will back. What he stood for, he will put resources behind. And that's really what I think we are failing at. We're failing at the level of leadership, which is really what we're talking about here today. In fact, I think it was Chinua Achebe that said that Nigeria is what it is because its leaders are not what they ought to be. So it actually keeps on going back to the leadership. And I've said that we could actually say the same about our country. I had the privilege of serving on the board of a parastatal. I mean, I chaired the audit committee at Telkom when Susan Masana was the CEO. We're transforming that into a listed company. It was a parastatal. But I mean, that's actually the kind of person that I served on the board of Transnet when we'd actually very, very good Black business executives. But again, it took courage for some people. But more importantly, those people could actually make decisions. I'm not saying Saki Matozoma made only the right decisions at Transnet, but you knew what he stood for. You knew he would make decisions. And that's actually what we need. In our country. There's just about no decision making being made on anything. And that, I think, is our problem. But why are there decisions not being made? Because we've got to go back and ask ourselves whether we've got the right leaders. Well, like I said, I hope I'm not stepping on any toes here.
Yeah, I think you make a valid point, because if you bring it back into corporate, if you don't make a decision, there's consequences, and it's also an indication of the type of leadership that you are. And you can't put money in and into commissions, and when reports come out, we don't see decisive action. That in itself, I think, for me, makes me agree with you that it is really an indication that there's a gap in leadership. There's an important question here that I think, because we are Black Management Forum and we stand for transformation, the question is around LGBTIQ. And I'm posing it to you because you would have, in your experience as a CEO, diversity and inclusion would have been something that you're possibly interested in as well. In light of the discrimination and exclusion that the LGBTIQ faces, has any consideration been given to the empowerment and upliftment of Black transgender women? And I think because I think of your work around the NGO where you're a director, I thought perhaps you would have some insights around this question.
Well, I've actually had to deal with it, and again, at the end of it, we can't spend a lot of time trying to discriminate people because of who they are. Because if you discriminate against somebody based on their sexual preferences, you will sooner feel comfortable at discriminating somebody because of their color. You will sooner become comfortable in discriminating against a person because of their type. Where do we stop? I think it is important for leaders to make sure that everybody that works in that organization, everybody that walks through the doors of that organization, everybody that actually applies their mind and their brain power for the benefit of that organization can do so without feeling that they're discriminated. We really must accept that we really can't discriminate against anybody. We all make different choices. Who actually says that my religious choice is more important than the sexual preference of somebody else? I don't know. And therefore, as leaders, it is our job to actually make everybody feel comfortable, make everybody feel at home. For crying out loud, most of us spend a big chunk of our lives at work. And it is important that people go there to enjoy themselves. They must actually not go there to be abused. At times, it is important to just think about some of those people as if they're your brother, your sister. But those of us that have children, to think about them as your children. And ask yourself how you will feel if your child was treated like that. And then you've got to ask yourself, what gives you the right to treat somebody else child, somebody else brother, somebody else sister like that? You know, we just can't do it. I'm not saying we must all like those things. I'm not saying everybody must like Christians because I'm Christian. I'm not saying, I'm saying the mere fact that you're Muslim, go and enjoy that, but it must actually not create a negative interactive point between me and you. On Friday, go to the mosque. On Sunday or Saturday, I go to church. And hey, afterwards, we get together. And we don't have to be talking about those things. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, what you said around, think about if it was your children or your child, is so key to me. I had a conversation with one of my mentors, and we were just talking about at my son's school, you know, how we're starting to talk about, you know, the bathrooms and how do we make it open and more diverse and inclusive. And the one thing that she said to me that stuck with me, it's exactly what she said. She said, think about racism and how it started. Because if you feel the way you feel because people are discriminating you because of who you are, then think about anybody who's got a different sexual orientation, different preference to you. So I think it's really critical to also just always bring it home. I think we're moving to a close. We've got about 15 minutes, but there's another question that I also wanted to just pose, just around what has been the most difficult challenge that you've had to go through as a leader operationally. Yeah.
I think I'm actually trying to think of the example. It's really shutting down something that you've been part to creating or been party to it. And that taught me about the need to change. I don't know whether any of you has ever faced a situation where you think you have made the decision, you communicate it, but you can't act on it. And you always want somebody to tell you not to do it. So the first two things that happened as a young CEO of the then employee benefits business at Old Mutual, we had to take a hard decision about getting rid of people. We went through this process, and my boss was very, very supportive. His name was Gerard van Niekerk. And we're meant to press the button. I think it was on a Tuesday. It was a day after the 16th of June. I remember driving to his house on that public holiday. And I said, boss, it's actually done. I'm making the announcement tomorrow. Do you think we must still go ahead with it? I'd actually planned, I'd actually been trained, and I was hoping that he'll say, Peter, don't. He said, look, Peter, we are where we are. We actually have to take this decision. I remember, and they said, we must do it. And I said, but Gerard, there's some people here with bonds of over R1 million. I mean, this is a story for another day. And Gerard said, it must be done. I'd actually planned it. I told everybody, I told the ExCo, but I was actually hoping that my boss will say, maybe stop it. He didn't. Another one, when we set up the multi-manager at Old Mutual, we create this. It was actually part of my strategy and part of building the business plan, because that actually was the only way to go if we're going to secure our future. We actually build symmetry, everything is fine. And in those days, we still had to sign checks. I had to sign the first 4 or 5 checks, totaling, I think, R1 billion to our opposition. You know, sitting there having to sign a check to Sanlam Investments, signing a check, but you actually knew it was done. And this thing had to hit me much later. When I was deputy CEO, the asset management business reported into me, the multi-manager business reported into me. And I remember saying to the guy that ran the multi-manager business that a big chunk of your funds should go to Old Mutual. He looked at me and said, but it doesn't work like that. And when you look at it, you know that that's the correct answer. But it's nonetheless so, but you've got to learn to accept that. So for me, the important thing is part of what you've got to be as a leader. You've got to embrace change, but you also have to change yourself, because I just could not understand how I could make checks to my competition, but I had to do it to be successful. And I think that as that multi-manager business is actually doing very well for the organization even today.
Sure. Yeah, you have to embrace change, but you have to change yourself. I think I think people generally, not just leaders, people often think that it's okay, I'm adaptable, I can accept change. But changing yourself.
I must actually tell you, talking about when we're to cut those jobs. I think at the time, we might have been one of the very few, one of the first organizations. When we were cutting jobs, we started at the top. The first people we announced that lost their jobs were actually my subordinates as the CEO. Those were the first people that we announced that they'd lost their jobs. We did not start at the bottom. We actually started at the top. And at the time, and this was not really a racial thing. But at the time, as you'll expect, the majority of the guys at the top were white. But I mean, we'd actually not seen that that's actually what we did, because part of it, we knew that if it was a cost issue, those of us at the top cost the organization more than the people at the bottom. So we actually started at the top, and it actually took a lot of courage to do that. And that was one of the other difficult things, because I had to face people that I drank coffee with just about every morning to say, you don't have a job.
No.
I had to face people who had come to my house with their wives to say, you don't have a job. Those things, trust me, can't be easy. You'll actually wish you didn't do it, but I had to do it for the credibility of the whole process, that the top was not immune to being negatively affected.
Sure, I can imagine. It's easy. I've known of people who would go into depression after handing out letters. So yeah, it's I know that it's really hard to effect. Yeah.
It's actually not easy. Yeah.
So sorry.
I'm saying that's how I was hoping my boss will say, well, maybe let's reconsider, but he didn't, unfortunately.
Yeah. So last one, and then Nkosinathi will do the closing. From Fundo saying, Mr. Moyo, how would you address the perception of you need to be financially stable to be able to address inequality issues in the workplaces? What is the ultimate cost of being a courageous leader? And just before you answer, I think we had one of the speakers here. He calls it F of money. So yeah, so I'm thinking that maybe Mfundo was also at that session. So yeah, Mr. Moyo, please, do you need to be financially stable to bring your values into the workplace? Because I think it's around just building the thread between your workplace and who you are.
Well, I actually don't think it's a question of financial strength. It actually goes back to your own beliefs. I'll share some of my experiences. I literally had nothing when I was a young partner at Ernst & Young. I possibly needed to rise to the top faster than a lot of people. But in a few cases where Black people actually felt they were ill-treated in the organization, and I mean, this actually became a strange thing. The person that will actually kind of represent them against the company was myself, and I was a partner in the company. And actually what being a partner means is you're a part owner. And I was actually standing up for these young Black people and some of our blue collar workers when they actually felt they'd been badly done by the organization. But it was also part of bringing dignity to them. So I actually don't think you need to have the financial muscle. I certainly did not have money, but I actually remember the words of, I think her name was Pumla Mzizi. The day I started as a partner in our Joburg office, she came to my office and said, Mr. Moyo, I hope your being here is going to make a difference in my life. And those are some of the things that, I mean, I still remember going back to 1993, 94, that you had that. So it's actually not ultimately about money. You actually have to think about people that started the transformation of this country. If you actually think that, God bless his soul, former President Nelson Mandela, he was actually prepared to go to jail. He could actually have lost his life. And on everything that we know, it was actually not as if he had lots of money, but he believed in something and he stood for something. And that's actually the most important thing. It is not about money. It's convenient to say I'm going to lose money. There are people that lost their lives. There are people that lost their loved ones in the pursuits of what they believed. And that's really what it's, I guess, it's all about.
Sure, it's. I mean, I feel that was a challenge directed at me. I see Isaiah says advice on challenging the status quo and in the midst of victimization and character assassinations. I think you've certainly said just do it. It's about your convictions and what you're willing to lose. But I don't know if you want to add more there.
Sorry, there's something I don't understand. Sia here says, it sounds like one needs a white ally to get that shot. No, you don't need necessarily a white ally. In fact, it's actually interesting. At the end of the day, you possibly have to ask yourself, who cares the most if I fail? And trust me, for most of us who are Black, the people that will come and commiserate with us are Black people. And those are the people that we've got to try and surround ourselves with.
Yeah, that's so true. But I think what maybe Sia's is misunderstanding is and as a woman, I know that because most of the positions that I would want to go to are occupied by men, it's going to probably be a man who helps me on my journey because he understands what is required in that position. But it does not necessarily mean that you need an ally who's white or a man. But it's just I think based on the circumstances and who's where you want to go. I think that's just my view. But what Mr. Moyo said is certainly quite true.
But I'm not saying that if a white person is sponsoring you, snap them. No, that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah. And I see here Mfundo wants to be like me. Mfundo, join us. Because now we've got another volunteer. I mean, it's it's Mfundo Zama. Please, Nhlanhla, we need to contact Mfundo Zama after this. We've got another volunteer. So yeah, great. So it's really for me been great. I think I've been certainly challenged and learned a lot from just this interaction. There's certainly scope for more because there's other things that you couldn't go into that maybe we would have wanted to go into. And at some point I wanted to bring in Karabo so that we could have a form of just an engagement, because I think sometimes we are saying it, you are saying it. I observed it. I mean, I picked it up on what she was talking about, but it would have been great also to just bring that flavor into the discussion, but there's still time yet. Nkosinathi, I just want to say, I'm saying my thank you to all of you, but Nkosinathi is going to do the official closing. And yeah, thanks.
Right. No, Mr. Moyo, thank you very much for a very
Peter,
insightful session. Lovely session. I mean, I've been looking forward to this all week. You know, actually, since the day you said yes, I've been very excited. The chair and I have been extremely excited, and our members. And like the proof is in the pudding. I think we were bordering on about 70 participants, which is a record for us. So thank you guys for joining in. And we've had really good insights, and you've shared a lot of wisdom and knowledge with us, especially us young up and coming managers who feeling disheartened and want to leave corporate and go and continue the hustle. But I think with your inspiration and your guidance, we found a lot of learning and positivity. So we'll keep pushing the struggle. We'll take the gems that you've spoken to us, especially about building networks, building Black networks. That's something very valuable that we all need to learn and understand how the mindset works and realize that at some point, it's not just about your education, you know, it's about your ability to sell yourself and your ability to create a cohort that allows you to grow and prosper. And also, most importantly, it's about identifying talent that will deliver, you know, so that we don't fall into the same trap of empowering people for the sake of it, but to the detriment of the organization, because at the end, we get mass retrenchment. So we really are honored, truly honored, humbled, and privileged. You know, I'm not a person who's speechless generally, but today I was. And yeah, we really thank you, Mr. Moyo, and we hope for further engagement with you. And we'd also just like to thank Karabo for connecting us with you, you know, for expanding her network. You know, she's doing exactly as you had kind of taught her and expanding her network. She's a very open individual. So I can bear testimony to that, to say that she's paying forward what you paid forward to her. And may we continue in that light and pay forward and grow and develop and help each other, you know, lift and rise and take South Africa where it should be. You know, we can be where we want to be. We can also be at the same level as our counterparts down in Stellenbosch. We have the capacity and capability, like you said, we have the same education taught by the same teachers. We have one advantage, we know the struggle. And we don't want to go there, and we want to help our people move forward. So thank you, Mr. Moyo. Thank you very much.
Kasnati, and to the BMF leadership, thanks very much. Talking about Karabo, when she said I must expect a call, she said to me, she didn't use those words. She said, you can't say no. No, so no, thanks very much. I also enjoyed it. Thanks.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you, Karabs.
And just for, and Karabo, we hope you've taken membership, as Mr. Moyo has alluded. If you haven't, it came from the boss's mouth himself to say that you must join. And by the way, forgive me, Mr. Moyo, for calling you Mr. Moyo. You said I must call you Uncle, didn't you?
No.
No, thank you, Prapita. I think to everyone that has been on with us, thank you for taking your time, and we hope that you pay your membership. Please pay your membership and be in good standing. And I think we're looking forward to you joining us tomorrow. Just on this one announcement, we have a Google session tomorrow that's designed to equip and help you as our members find value in understanding the digital space. But yeah, from us, it's a good night. God bless, stay safe, and thank you once again for joining.